I wasn't surprised when I read that a woman tried to kill King Milan. He was well known for having toxic marriage and countless number of mistresses. My first thought was that one of these women decided to end his life. But it wasn't the case. What happened and why? In 1868, Serbian Prince Mihailo was murdered. He left only one illegitimate son. Obrenović dynasty came close to dying out. Serbian politicians agreed that Milan should become new prince. Milan was distant cousin of Mihailo. Milan was also very young, almost 14. He had terrible childhood, and late Prince Mihailo became his guardian. Between 1868 and 1872, 3 regents ruled instead of Milan. Milan's true reign began in 1872 when he was 18. He was womanizer and gambler. There are some indications that he took bribes for foreign companies that wanted to have monopoly in Serbia. Serbia wasn't a completely independent country. Milan ruled as prince and vassal of Ottoman Empire. In 1876, war erupted between Ottoman Empire and Serbs and Montenegrins. Between 1876 and 1878, there were 2 wars. On 1878 Berlin Congress, both Serbia and Montenegro gained full independence. Prince Milan decided to take the title of king in 1882. Serbia became kingdom. But not all things went according to the plan. Milan had bad temper and often argued with politicians. His marriage was absolute disaster. He married Natalia in 1875 when he was 21 and she was 16. Their grandmothers were sisters, which means they were related. Cousin marriages are forbidden in Serbia. Such marriages had to be approved by the Metropolitan Bishop of Belgrade. But this was never done. One could argue that the marriage wasn't legal. But the bigger problem was that Milan and Natalia hated one another. They had 2 sons together, Alexander and Sergei. Sergei died as a newborn baby. He was only 5 days old. Their remaining son Alexander was traumatized by his parents' marriage. Milan was pro-Habsburg and Natalia was pro-Russian. This means they clashed even in the politics. Milan continued chasing after women rather publicly. Milan and Natalia finally divorced in 1888. But divorce came too late because they already damaged their son. On the political scene, Milan showed ruthlessness. Many people were sentenced to death during his reign or given harsh prison sentences. In 1885, King Milan started war against Bulgarians. There was only one major battle and Serbs lost. Radical Party became arch-enemy of the king. Milan was paranoid about radicals and believed they were behind every crisis in the country. Some would say Milan had reasons to be paranoid. During his lifetime, there were 4 assassination attempts against him. His predecessor, Prince Mihailo, was murdered. In 1889, Milan suddenly abdicated. He spent the next decade traveling across Europe and occasionally returning to Serbia. He died in 1901, aged 46. Surprisingly, there were no conspiracy theories about his death. His death was blamed on pneumonia. Interestingly, he died in Vienna, capital of Habsburg Empire, in a house belonging to Emperor Franz Joseph. Emperor Franz Joseph and Milan were friends. In 1903, Milan's son Alexander was murdered alongside his wife Draga. This marked the end of Obrenović dynasty. Now let's talk about those 4 assassination attempts. They happened in 1871, 1872, 1882 and 1899. The first 2 are rumored to be fake assassination attempts. But the last 2 were confirmed as genuine attempts on Milan's life. In 1871, Milan was traveling in the coach when a bomb exploded near a fountain he was passing by. This happened in Terazije, which is part of Belgrade's town center. The bomb was very small, which rose question about how deadly it could have been. Perpetrators were never caught. The rumor was that one of the regents, Milivoje Petrovich Blaznavac, was behind this fake attempt. Supposedly, Blaznavac wanted to scare Milan in order to control him more easily. Fun fact, Milivoje Petrovich was from village Blaznava, and that's why he was called Blaznavac. Then in 1872, Milan was in town Smederevo and went to outdoor toilet. Toilet collapsed and Milan almost drowned in the feces. However, he had a gun and fired a shot that alerted his entourage. He was saved. Famous Serb historian Slobodan Jovanović believed this was an accident. The outdoor toilet was old and could have collapsed. Milan saw this incident as an assassination attempt. I will now say a few words about the 1899 attempt before focusing on the 1882 attempt. In 1899, Milan wasn't king anymore, but he was given honorary title as the commander of Serbian army. Many people believed that the presence of the former king was bad for the country. Former firefighter Đura Knežević shot at Milan. This happened on Orthodox holiday of Ivanjdan, and it is called Ivanjdan assassination attempt. Ivanjdan is birth of Saint John the Baptist. Literal translation would be Ivan's day. Ivan is Slavic version of English name John. Though John the Baptist is called Jovan Krstitelj in Serbian Orthodox Church. Don't try to find logic in this. The shooter Knežević was executed by the firing squad. There were many rumors about who was behind the assassination attempt. A finger was pointed at radicals, Russians, or supporters of rival Karađorđević dynasty. Radical politician Nikola Pašić issued a public statement that radicals weren't involved. Nikola Pašić was Serbian prime minister during World War I. It's strange that Knežević was executed before the whole incident was resolved fully, though he did claim that he worked alone. Now back to 1882. The shooter was Jelena Marković, better known as Ilka. Ilka is one of countless nicknames for Jelena. The incident was known as Ilka's assassination attempt. Ilka had personal reasons to shoot at the king. Ilka wanted revenge for the death of her husband Jevrem. First, I have to say a few things about Marković family. There were two brothers, Jevrem and Svetozar Marković. Jevrem joined the army while Svetozar became first Serbian socialist. Svetozar is much more famous than Jevrem. Svetozar was very active in the public life in Serbia. He did huge things for someone who had very short life. Svetozar died from tuberculosis when he was 29 in 1875. After communists took control in Yugoslavia in 1945, they started worshipping Svetozar Marković. He was seen as their political ancestor. Communists renamed Serbian town Jagodina to Svetozarevo after Svetozar Marković. After the fall of communism, Svetozarevo changed the name back to Jagodina. Now I will focus on Jevrem, Ilka's husband. Jevrem had interesting military career. In 1863, he participated in Polish uprising against Russians. He fought on the side of Polish. Serbia did not participate in the fighting, and Jevrem joined Polish rebels on his own. The rebellion was crushed, and Jevrem returned to Serbia. Soon he left the army and became member of the parliament. He belonged to Radical Party. In 1867, Jevrem married Ilka Bajić. Ilka was previously married to medical doctor Jovan Andrejević when she was 17. Ilka was widowed when she was 19. Ilka was well educated and adopted socialist and anarchist ideas. She shared ideas of her second husband Jevrem. They had a good marriage. Ilka never had children, which can explain why Yevrim became the center of her world. Yevrim left parliament and rejoined the army. The war with Ottoman Empire was at full swing. In November 1877, a small part of Serbian army organized rebellion against Milan. This is known as Topolski Ustanak, English Topola Uprising. The rebels wanted to replace Milan with Petar Karađorđević. Petar fought against Ottomans under assumed name Petar Mrkonjić. Petar was gaining popularity among people while Milan was losing support. Milan sent the army against the rebels and uprising was quickly destroyed. Interesting fact, Petar would become Serbian king in 1903 after Milan's son Alexander was murdered. Jevre Marković was arrested for participating in the 1877 rebellion. Some historians believe Jevre had nothing to do with the rebels. He was given a death sentence and he was executed in 1878. He was guilty of being radical and Svetozar's brother. Ilka was devastated after losing Jevrem. She waited permission to transport her husband's body to Jagodina, where his brother Svetozar was buried. Only in 1882 Ilka was given such permission, which explains why she waited to kill Milan. On 11th October 1882, King Milan visited Saborna Crkva. The church is dedicated to Archangel Michael, but it is better known as Saborna Crkva. Saborna Crkva usually translates as the cathedral. Royals were married and baptized their children in Saborna Crkva. Many important people were buried inside or outside the church. Prince Mihailo and his father, Prince Miloš, were also buried there. Ilka shot at King Milan inside the church on 11th October, which was her birthday. Serbia was shocked. But not because someone tried to kill the king. Serbs were shocked that the shooter was a woman and that she did it inside the church. Patriarchal society treated women like children. No one could understand how a woman would dare to act. Ilka used her husband's pistol in the shooting. Ilka missed her mark since she had no training. The bullet hit one woman in the church, but she survived. Ilka was immediately arrested. How could Ilka approach Milan? Serbia was a small country. In 1880, Belgrade had 36,000 people. Royals never had large entourages. Ilka would have no problem approaching the king. Public in Serbia believed Ilka was part of some conspiracy. The investigation lasted for months, which was unusual. Another woman, Lena Knićanin, was accused alongside Ilka. Lena is also one of countless nicknames for Jelena. According to some sources, Lena was Ilka's cousin or close friend. During the investigation, Lena confirmed that she knew that Ilka was planning to kill the king. Lena was also a widow of Milan's personal adjutant. Adjutant is a military officer who acts as an administrative assistant to the senior officer or king. This might have been the reason why Lena was kept in prison during the investigation against Ilka. In February 1883, Lena was found dead in prison. Her death was ruled as suicide by strangulation. Famous doctor Laza Patru examined the body and believed it was a murder. In April 1883, Ilka was sentenced to death. Her trial lasted only 3 hours. But King Milan was in trouble because executing a woman was very unpopular. Thus Milan pardoned Ilka and gave her life sentence. Only 10 days later, Ilka was found dead in her cell. She already tried to take her life with scissors, but failed. Ilka's death was ruled out as suicide. She apparently strangled herself with a towel. Almost no one believed in the official version of the events. One doctor claimed it was impossible for Ilka to take her life with a towel. Rumors spread how Lena betrayed Ilka before the shooting and wrote to the authorities about Ilka's plans. No one took Lena's warnings seriously because she was a woman. According to one contemporary politician, women tend to invent stories in their fragile minds. I don't have to tell you how insulting this is for me as a woman. To add more mystery to the story, the guard who guarded Lena was murdered a few days after she died. People believed that he had seen something and had to be silenced. We will never know the whole story about Ilka, Lena, and the god. Today, Ilka is much more famous than Đura Knežević, who shot at Milan in 1899. Famous Serb director Zdravko Šotra made a TV movie called Ilka in 2003. Ilka was played by Nataša Ninković. What do I think? I think Lena's death was murder since she had no reason to take her life. She wasn't even trialed, so she had every reason to hope to be freed. The god's murder cannot be simple coincidence. On the other hand, Ilka's death is trickier. She had no reason to live since her husband was dead, and she was sentenced to life in prison. Ilka did try to take her life with scissors. This means that Ilka's death could have been suicide. I don't think there were two suicides. It was either two murders or murder and suicide. Trying to kill anyone is wrong, but I do understand Ilka's reasons. She lost the most important person in her life and wanted to get even. Judging by his previous conduct, Milan was capable of ordering the killings. But Lena might have been killed by someone connected to her who didn't want to be exposed. It could have been a group of officers, politicians, or even foreigners. We can only speculate who was responsible. Ilka Marković was part of a generation of Serbian women who became visible in the history. Until the second half of the 19th century, most Serb women were in the shadows, nameless and faceless.